And George, you really do have to step back and take a breath. We have not seen a week like this in Washington and Wall Street since the Depression. Maybe ever.
Oh, stepping way back, at a point when, judging by the job approval of the President and the Congress, the two political branches of government, the prestige of Washington has never been lower. The power of Washington has never been higher than it is now and will be when they empower the Paulson administration, which begins today.
The Paulson Empire.
You asked the Treasury Secretary, is this socialism? He answered, no, it's not socialism, it's necessary. That's a brave non sequitur, but a non sequitur. When the British Labour Party was socialist, it defined socialism as government control of the commanding heights of the economy. In Britain at that time, it was coal, steel, railroads. The commanding heights of the American economy are financial services, and they are now controlled by the government.
And you come back, Cokie, though, to what Secretary Paulson said. There's no
choice, and he seems to have convinced the Congress of that in talking to the leaders.
Certainly the two members we had here today.
And there doesn't seem to be much option. I mean, it is a sense that if we don't do this, that the credit markets could just stay frozen. Nobody gets a mortgage, nobody gets a loan for a business, nobody can do anything, and the economy just sits like Japan. But that still doesn't mean that you can't look at it and say, let's get mad. And I think that that's what you're going to see on Capitol Hill this week as they take this up, that people are going to be furious and trying to get something back for this, as Chairman Dodd said. You know, you can't just give them the money and not ask for anything back. And that's where the fight's going to be.
Except he sounded like they might, that's exactly what they might do.
Excuse me, I think they will. I mean, to borrow a phrase from the late gonzo journalist Hunter Thompson, fear and loathing. Fear will trump loathing here. Well, and my guess is that the Democrats who already are talking bravely about let's protect the guy who's losing or the gal who's losing her home and let's put in the stimulus are going to fold. Because when the administration says on Tuesday, you either got to pass this by late Thursday or Friday morning or we're going over the abyss,
and we're still there.
The Democrats should not rush to rubber stamp this blank check.
How many days do you want, Donna?
You know, George, I mean,
No,
Sam, I'm sorry.
I like it both.
That's all right.
It's enough of that.
There's 44 days left before the election. What's the rush? This is $700 billion taxpayers' dollars.
The rush is the cliff.
A year ago, Secretary Paulson argued that the subprime crisis was not serious. Today, he goes up to Capitol Hill and he's raised the alarm bells. So, of course, it's serious, but we should not rush to rubber stamp this without getting some transparency and some accountability put into this package.
Of course, the invasion of Poland is serious, but we should not rush to stop. I mean, come on, Donna.
That's the problem.
We got to do it.
That is the problem.
Sam, the very people who are telling us that they know for absolute certain there is a cliff right in front of us are the same people who have told us all along that what they had done the day before would stop what is going to happen and did happen the next day.
You want to take a chance?
Well, this is all a chance, Sam, because what the government is going to do with all this money is take over opaque and damaged assets. But the heart of this crisis is that no one knows who owes how much to whom. And the government is going to
they don't know even how to price these assets.
They don't know how to price these assets.
And also, that there's a considerable concern that the assets will go up in price now that the government's coming in to buy them. You know, and there'll be a lot of funny business going on. Look, you know, I'd like to see the CEOs of these companies march down Wall Street in sackcloth and ashes. I mean, I think that, you know, there is a certain amount of sense in the Congress that these guys can't get away with this with $100 million parachutes or buyouts or whatever. And they're going to try to do something about that, and there's going to be a fight.
But the question is, do you do it when you actually have the leverage and the power to do it? And I'm actually torn. I listen to both sides. You hear Senator Dodd says he's got an instinct to do this. On the other hand, he's afraid of not acting. Yet it's just then when you have the most leverage to get what you need.
But George, I agree that tails are in the devil and vice versa and all of that. It may not work. That's true. But I do buy the idea we've got to do something quickly. Look how quickly last week the escalation of this crisis, one company after company after company, AIG, and then the market said no, 404 or 8 points. They've got to do something now, and without the power of the U.S. government...
Probably because the market also responded so positively to this. To this. Now you can't afford to go backwards.
No, I'm not saying I know it's going to work.
Is this the last shoe?
Well, I don't know, Don.
And what other sector will put us into deeper
Well,
water.
let's just wait and see.
You know?
Let's just hold everything here and see if we're going to be all right.
Yeah,
I don't
right
buy
now,
that.
$700 billion. That means the next president will have hardly any options.
That's right.
For universal health care,
No.
For job creation. That's the problem here. This is why you have to think about this.
Well, it also gets people thinking, you know, are they doing it on purpose? You know, to keep the government from having any discretionary income. There's always that conspiracy theory going. I don't subscribe to it, but it's out there.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. One of the clear casualties of this is the Obama administration, if there is such, because he has a much more expensive agenda. You can argue the merits of it. You can't argue the arithmetic anymore.
Right.
If this is the cost of health care, as you said, if this is the cost of the Iraq war,
well, unless this
gonna be
works.
paying
I mean, again, this is
interest
just
on the
obligation
national
right now.
debt.
If you
That's it.
buy the assets and you are able to resell them, and these are two big ifs, then the government could actually profit.
Eventually. But that's very much an eventually.
There is a question of governance here. Barney Frank, chairman of the House Banking Committee, says no unelected government official should have discretion, complete discretion over $800 billion. Small footnote. No elected official should have discretion over $800 billion of the American economy.
But just to go back to that point, the legislation itself has an extraordinary paragraph.
Right.
On the second page, maybe it's the third page. It says that every decision the secretary makes is not subject to any review by any administrative agency, any court of law.
And the first report is due in 3 months.
Right.
That's after the election. So, George, you talk about things adding up. I mean, John McCain plan doesn't exactly add up, especially when he wants to extend the Bush tax cuts, which are, you know, perhaps 40% of the current deficit, as well as give more corporate tax cuts. So both candidates will have to recast their campaigns and come up with a plan that the American people will believe in.
I've made clear I think the Democrats are going to look for something called oversight. And when I said that they're going to cave on the question of a bankruptcy judge rewriting the mortgage and all of that, I didn't mean that. I think you can come in oversight.
It sounded to me like he was saying they're not going to get that.
Well, I think they're going to look for it, and I think there's going to be a demand for some sort of oversight.
I think you're saying the same thing. I think that oversight is the one thing.
You mean we're talking past each other?
But who's looking out for the little guy and the little gal? That's the question. And what I heard today is that we're looking out for Wall Street. We're privatizing wealth, nationalizing the problem, but no one's looking out for Main Street.
Well, the answer that they would give is that if you don't do this, the little guy and the little gal are going to wake up tomorrow morning and their credit cards aren't going to work.
Yes, it's trickle-down misery.
So that
Well,
is,
except the crisis that probably precipitated this more than anything else was the fact when you saw one of these money market mutual funds on Wednesday or Thursday, actually what they call break the buck, money people thought was safe is all of a sudden worth less than they think they have in their savings account. That just was a killer.
And what they used to create suddenly insurance for money market accounts was the 1934 Gold Act. I mean, that's what we're going. Find anything, just anything, to make this legal.
And everyone's now for re-regulation. You know, we deregulated the savings and loan industry. When was that? Well, it began in '79, I realized, but Reagan really accelerated it, and then we had to clean that up. We deregulated beginning in '99 and 2000. The banking industry, Phil Gramm and others, I think that Obama ad is correct. He was one of the prime movers. Now we're going to have to clean that up at great expense. So, I mean, I think for John McCain, though, who has the heaviest burden here, since he voted for all of the deregulation, for him to now say he would be the toughest re-regulator is kind of a hard thing to swallow.
And he's a Republican, and whenever Republicans get into this kind of mess, everybody, even people who were not born or close to being born, the specter of Herbert Hoover comes out to haunt them.
I suppose the McCain campaign's hope is that when there's a big crisis, people will go for age and experience. The question is, who in this crisis looked more presidential, calm and unflustered? It wasn't John McCain, who, as usual, substituting vehemence for coherence, said, let's fire somebody. And he picked one of the most experienced and conservative people in the administration, Chris Cox, and for no apparent reason, or at least none that he vouchsafed, he said, fire Chris Cox at the SEC. It was unpresidential behavior by a presidential aspirant.
Well, that was 2 days after he